All right, Talk Ticker listeners, let's jump into AbCellera Biologics' recent Q4 2024 earnings call.
Yeah.
Their stock ticker, ABCL. It took a bit of a hit after the closing bell today.
It did.
So we're going to try to break down what's really going on behind those numbers.
Right.
This biotech company, it's known for its awesome antibody discovery platform and a history of really successful partnerships.
Absolutely.
But they're in the middle of a pretty major transition.
Yeah.
They're aiming to become a full-fledged clinical stage biotech.
Right.
Which means less focus on licensing and more on developing their own drug pipeline.
Exactly. And that shift is clearly reflected in their financials.
Okay.
For the full year, AbCellera brought in $29 million in revenue. Now that's down from $38 million in 2023.
Right.
But remember, they're intentionally pulling back from those big licensing deals.
Okay.
At the same time, they've ramped up their R&D spending to about $167 million.
Yeah.
Which makes total sense given their new focus on internal drug development.
So it's like they're trading short-term revenue for the potential of long-term blockbuster drugs.
Yeah.
But the big question for investors is, can they actually deliver on this ambitious plan?
That's the question, isn't it?
What makes them think they can compete with the big dogs in the pharma world?
Well, they've got a couple of programs that are generating a lot of buzz.
Okay.
And rightfully so. Their lead program, ABCL 635, is designed for an undisclosed target in the metabolic and endocrine space.
Okay.
Think conditions like diabetes and obesity, massive markets with huge unmet needs.
It's pretty interesting that they're keeping that specific target under wraps for now.
It is.
Do you think that's just a way to build hype and keep people guessing?
It certainly adds an element of intrigue.
Yeah.
They did say they'll reveal the target during their next earnings call. So maybe they're trying to drum up anticipation.
Yeah.
But I think it also speaks to their confidence in this program.
Okay.
They're projecting peak annual sales exceeding $2 billion, hinting at a potential first-in-class treatment that's not something you'd keep secret if you weren't pretty sure you had something special.
All right. So big potential for ABCL 635.
Yeah.
But still a lot of unknowns at this point.
Absolutely.
What about their other key program, ABCL 575?
Right.
Are they being as tight-lipped about that one?
Not quite as much.
Okay.
We know that ABCL 575 is a non-depleting OX40 ligand antagonist. Now, I know that sounds like a mouthful.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's a type of drug that blocks a specific pathway in the immune system.
Got it.
And it's being developed to treat a whole range of autoimmune diseases. Think things like atopic dermatitis,
Okay.
celiac disease, asthma conditions that affect a huge portion of the population.
So potentially a massive market opportunity there.
Right.
But if I'm remembering correctly, isn't Sanofi already in late-stage trials with a similar drug? How can AbCellera hope to compete with a giant like that?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Sanofi's drug, Amlitelimab, is indeed further along in development. AbCellera is betting that ABCL 575 can differentiate itself with a few key advantages. Higher potency.
Okay.
A longer half-life, and a more concentrated formulation that could allow for less frequent dosing.
Okay.
Whether these advantages are enough to carve out a sizable chunk of the market remains to be seen.
It's certainly a bold move to go head-to-head with a company like Sanofi.
It is.
But hey, you don't disrupt an industry by playing it safe, right?
Absolutely, and it's not like they're putting all their eggs in one basket.
Right.
Beyond these two lead programs, they have over 20 other preclinical programs in development covering a wide range of therapeutic areas.
Wow.
They're aiming to move 2 of these into CTA-enabling studies each year.
Okay.
So there's a steady stream of potential coming down the pipeline.
So lots of shots on goal, which is always a good thing in biotech.
For sure.
But they're also still doing some strategic partnering, right? I know they're pulling back overall, but they just announced a pretty big deal with AbbVie.
You're right, and that deal actually gives us some insight into their overall strategy. It's a partnership focused specifically on their T-cell engager, or TCE, platform.
Yeah.
And it's a much more focused collaboration than the broader licensing deals they've done in the past.
Right.
This tells me they're not giving up on partnering entirely,
Right.
but they're being much more selective about where they choose to play.
Makes sense to me. Focus on your core strengths, partner strategically in areas where it makes sense.
Right.
And build up your own internal pipeline for the long haul.
Exactly.
But can they afford to do all that? Let's talk about their financial situation.
Well, they ended 2024 with over $800 million in liquidity, which is a pretty healthy cash position.
Good.
They expect their cash burn for 2025 to be similar to last year.
Right.
And they're planning to significantly reduce their capital expenditures, particularly on property, plant, and equipment.
So they've got a decent runway, but they're going to need to be smart about how they use that cash.
Absolutely. And they seem to be aware of that they're projecting that they have enough liquidity to fund their operations for at least the next 3 years. But that's based on their current spending plans.
Right.
If those plans change, either due to unexpected costs or a decision to accelerate development of certain programs, that runway could shorten.
So plenty to keep an eye on as we watch AbCellera's evolution from platform provider to clinical stage biotech. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but it could be incredibly rewarding if they can execute on their vision.
Yeah.
What do you think, listeners? Are you bullish or bearish on AbCellera's prospects?
We'd love to hear your thoughts and stick around.
Okay.
Because in our This Is Not Financial Advice segment, we'll throw out a wild speculative trade idea based on what we've learned today. It'll be fun, maybe even a little crazy.
Right.
But remember, always do your own research before making any investment decisions.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right. Okay, let's do it.
Let's go.
You know, one thing that really struck me during the Q&A portion of the call was AbCellera's response to a question about competition, particularly from companies in China. There's been a lot of talk lately about the rapid growth of the Chinese biotech sector, especially in areas like T-cell engagers, which we know AbCellera is focusing on.
It's definitely a trend worth watching, and I'm curious to hear how AbCellera plans to stay ahead of the curve.
They seem pretty confident that they can maintain their competitive edge. They emphasize their commitment to developing highly differentiated first-in-class assets, not just me-too drugs that offer incremental improvements over existing treatments. They believe that their focus on cutting-edge science and their ability to rapidly identify and develop novel antibodies will set them apart.
So they're aiming to be the disruptors, not the disrupted. I like that mindset.
Yeah.
It makes their recent partnership with AbbVie even more interesting.
It does.
It sounds like they were very strategic in choosing a partner for their TCE platform.
Absolutely. They specifically sought out a company with a proven track record in drug development deep pockets to fund clinical trials and a strong commitment to the TCE space. AbbVie checks all those boxes.
This deal could be a real win-win for both companies. AbbVie gets access to AbCellera's cutting-edge technology. And AbCellera gets validation from a major player and the potential revenue stream from milestones and royalties. It also allows them to focus their internal resources on other promising areas of their pipeline.
That's a key point. They're being very deliberate about allocating their resources, both financial and human. They're not trying to do everything themselves, but they're also not spreading themselves too thin by chasing every opportunity that comes their way.
It's a delicate balancing act for sure, especially when you're making a transition as significant as this one.
Absolutely.
It's not easy for a company to shift gears from being primarily a discovery stage platform provider to a full-fledged clinical stage biotech.
You're absolutely right. And they acknowledge during the call that this transition will come with challenges. One of the biggest hurdles they'll face is building up their clinical development expertise. They have a lot of experience in antibody discovery and early stage development.
But running large-scale global clinical trials is a whole different ballgame.
It requires a different skill set for sure.
Yeah.
They'll need to recruit experienced clinical trial managers, navigate the complex regulatory landscape, and manage the logistics of enrolling patients and collecting data from multiple sites around the world.
Exactly. And it sounds like they're taking steps to address those needs.
Okay.
They've mentioned that they're building out their translational science and clinical development teams.
Good.
And they're approaching it strategically.
All right.
They're not trying to create a massive infrastructure all at once. They're being thoughtful about hiring based on the specific requirements of their clinical programs.
That's a smart approach. It allows them to stay nimble and scale up gradually as their pipeline progresses. It also helps them manage their cash burn, which is always a top priority for biotech companies. Especially those that aren't yet profitable. Speaking of cash, let's revisit their financial position. We know they ended the year with over $800 million in liquidity, which gives them some breathing room. But they're also projecting that their cash usage in 2025 will be similar to 2024. How long can they keep this up before they need to raise more capital?
Well, they did say that They believe they have enough liquidity to fund operations for at least the next 3 years.
Okay.
And they're also planning to reduce their capital expenditures this year, which will help extend their runway.
That's encouraging, but it's important to remember that these are just projections.
Right.
A lot can happen in 3 years, especially in the unpredictable world of biotech unexpected clinical trial results. Delays in regulatory approvals, or even a shift in the competitive landscape could all impact their cash needs.
True, and they're still a long way from profitability.
Yeah.
They're going to be burning through cash as they ramp up their clinical trials.
Right.
So they'll need to either start generating revenue from partnerships or see some success with their internal programs in order to become self-sustaining.
Exactly. A lot is riding on the success of their lead programs, ABCL 635 and ABCL 575.
Yeah.
If they can get those drugs to market, it could be a game changer for the company. But if those programs stumble,
Right.
they'll be under pressure to find other ways to bring in revenue.
It's a high-risk, high-reward situation, but that's the nature of the biotech industry, isn't it?
It is.
The potential upside is enormous, but so is the potential downside.
That's why it's so important for investors to do their due diligence and understand the risks involved. But it's also what makes biotech so exciting.
Yeah.
These companies are pushing the boundaries of science, and they have the potential to develop truly transformative therapies.
It's fascinating to watch their journey unfold, and it's a privilege to be able to share these insights with our listeners.
It is.
We'll be keeping a close eye on AbCellera as they continue their transition, and we'll be sure to keep you updated on their progress. But before we move on to our This Is Not Financial Advices segment, I'm curious to hear your overall assessment of AbCellera. Are you bullish or bearish on their long-term prospects?
That's a tough question. They certainly have a lot going for them: a strong platform, a promising pipeline, a solid financial position, and a management team that seems to be making all the right moves.
Yeah.
But they also face significant challenges, including competition from established players, the need to build clinical development expertise, and the inherent risks associated with drug development.
It's a mixed bag, for sure.
Yeah.
But I tend to agree that they're worth watching closely. They're a company with a lot of potential, and I'm excited to see what they can achieve in the coming years.
Okay.
But now for a little bit of fun. Let's shift gears and put on our speculative trading hats.
Okay.
Ready to get a little wild.
I'll say, one thing that stood out to me from this earnings call was AbCellera's emphasis on sustainability.
Okay.
They spent some time talking about their efforts to minimize their environmental impact and operate in a socially responsible way.
That's great to hear. It's definitely something investors are paying more attention to these days. It's not just about the bottom line anymore. It's about how companies are contributing to the greater good.
Exactly. And it sounds like AbCellera is really taking this to heart. They're not just focused on developing life-saving therapies, they're also thinking about how to conduct their business in a way that benefits society and the planet.
It's refreshing to see a company that's prioritizing both profit and purpose. It's a sign that they're thinking long-term and building a business that's sustainable in every sense of the word.
I agree, and frankly, I think it makes them an even more attractive investment. Companies that embrace these values are often better positioned for success in the long run.
So to sum it all up, AbCellera is a company with a lot of moving parts right now.
Yeah.
They're in the middle of a major transition. They're facing fierce competition.
Right.
And they're still a long way from profitability.
They are.
But they also have a lot of potential, and they seem to be executing their strategy effectively. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground today, but no Talk Tickers deep dive would be complete without our This Is Not Financial Advice segment.
Right.
Ready to have some fun and cook up a crazy trade idea.
Let's do it. But remember, folks, this is purely hypothetical, and for entertainment purposes, only never make investment decisions based solely on a wild idea you hear on a podcast.
Absolutely. Always do your own research consult with a financial advisor, and only invest what you can afford to lose.
Right.
Okay, disclaimer out of the way. Let's get those creative juices flowing. How about this? What if we go long, AbCellera, and short, Sanofi?
Whoa, that's a bold one. A true David versus Goliath scenario. What's the logic there?
Well, we know that both companies are developing treatments for autoimmune diseases.
Right.
Sanofi's Amlitelimab is further along in development, but AbCellera is betting that their ABCL 575 will prove to be superior if they're right. And ABCL 575 ends up dominating the market. We could see a huge shift in value between these two companies.
It's definitely a high-risk, high-reward proposition.
Yeah.
Sanofi is a massive company with a lot of resources, so it wouldn't be easy for AbCellera to knock them off their throne. But hey, stranger things have happened in the biotech world.
Exactly. And that's what makes this trade idea so intriguing. It's a bet on AbCellera's ability to disrupt the status quo and become a major player in the autoimmune disease market.
Just to be clear, folks, we are not recommending that anyone actually make this trade. It's purely hypothetical and involves a significant amount of risk.
Right. This is just a thought experiment to get you thinking about the potential dynamics at play in this sector.
But it's a fun one to think about. What do you think, listeners? Do you have any other crazy trade ideas based on AbCellera's earnings call? Share them with us on social media. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And that about wraps it up for this Talk Ticker's deep dive into AbCellera Biologics.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, happy investing.